contribute to their nations. And a lot of wonderful youngsters have grown to be stronger with their patriotism and their capabilities. They will be the major players of the aerospace industry in the future. As to the direction of our aerospace industry, with technologies like G20, I believe we will have more of such things brought about, and with such series of development, we will improve the entire Air Force's capabilities in fighting, and we will blaze a new trail of actually taking the lead compared to the world's average. We will also bring about a new set of jets that could suit the needs of our nation. I believe in the future, in terms of the mechanization, informatization, and intelligence of the fighter jets, we will have a longer future and make new contributions, which will surprise you pleasantly. All in all, we are always on the way. Thank you.
That's the chief designer of the China's fifth generation stealth fighter jets, the J-20. It seems he's pretty confident about China's technological prowess at this stage, because China can now develop its own stealth fighter jets and also its own carriers. What does this say about the manufacturing capability and the technological advance so far we've made?
What is significant about what it's doing in the front of technology is that we have set up a lot of platforms. It is through those platforms you can continue to climb up the technological ladder globally. Learning technology is not just a matter of reading books. You must have a platform, and you learn things by doing things. You set up a prototype, and once you have that, with that platform, you can continue to improve.
So it's a systematic
It's a
layout.
systematic. So that logic applies to our aircraft carrier. It also the logic also applies to the jet fights. Now, in the case of China, as the Chinese economy continue to integrate with the rest of the world, if you are realistic, you have to have the military to back that up, and that means we have to move beyond the previous concept of a Chinese army being just the ground force to stretch its dimension in the form of a navy and in the form of the air force. This is a critical lesson that China has learned. For us to move forward, we should start by using our comparative advantage. But comparative advantage in the long term need to be changed into competitive advantage. So that logic applies to our business, to our military force as well.
So you are saying that China will be more competitive in all different fields?
China has become increasingly competitive already. But we are sort of in the middle range of the global spectrum. If you only look at its economy, the aggregate amount is number 2, but in terms of GDP per capita, we are actually below world average, edging up to the world average.
And it is climbing steadily. And gradually. Well, let's turn to some other NPC deputies who are about to speak to the press. Well, many of the NPC deputies are actually from the ethnic minority backgrounds. One of the NPC deputies who will show up at the delegates' corridor today is this girl. Well, she is from Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. She is Rikiyamu Metisadi. Well, she has a very famous great-grandfather. Well, the great-grandfather's name is better known as Uncle Korban. He was a well-known Uyghur farmer who lived a poor life before the founding of the People's Republic. And in 1955, he prepared dozens of food, and he tried to ride a donkey to Beijing to meet Chairman Mao to show his appreciation for the improvement of his life. But fellow villagers stopped him. They told him it was impossible to make a donkey walk that far. But he finally met Chairman Mao in 1958. And that relationship between the leaders and the farmer's family from Xinjiang did not just stop there. 50 years later, his great-granddaughter took another ride of a different kind. Rikiyamu rode on the Liaoning, the first aircraft carrier of China. Well, she served in the Navy. And last year, President Xi sent a letter of congratulation to the farmer's family, wishing them good luck. So Ricky Yamu said, "It was the best New Year present probably for the whole family and for the area." And during last year's Two session, a village officer from the prefecture where she come from handed President Xi that family photo of Uncle Kurban's descendants. Well, that's a little anecdote about the NPC deputy, and she will very soon speak to the press about her story and her great-grandfather's story. But this basically sets a tone of the ethnic minority relations with the Chinese leadership. Okay, already we have the NPC deputies, Rick Yami, on the line. Let's try to take a listen what she has to say.
Thank you. With CCTV. 移动网的记者，我想请问，卢克亚姆麦提赛地代表，您的曾外祖父是曾经名闻全国的库尔班大叔。
Great-grandfather
替您的奶奶给习近平
Kurban
写了一封信，
used to write a letter to the General Secretary Xi Jinping. So we are very interested in your life of the children of Kurban, and how are you going to carry forward the spirits of your great-grandfather? My great-grandfather used to meet with Chairman Mao, and once again I also meet with General Secretary Mr. Xi Jinping, and I feel very proud. And my families are all leading a very happy life in my hometown. Well, back home, life is becoming better and better, and they strongly feel that the policies of the central government are bringing benefits to our hometown. We still keep the photos of my great-grandfather meeting with Chairman Mao, and also the letters given by General Secretary Xi Jinping, and we will continue to carry forward the spirits of my past generations and measure up to the expectations of the central government in loving the country and loving the people. So the officials and people of Xinjiang are working in unity. So we work together and we assist each other to tackle those difficult problems. We also visit those Han Chinese families and households, and please rest assured, and all the people in Xinjiang will continue to work in unity for a great victory in our country.
You have to bear in mind that when she first, Rikiyama, when she first come to the carrier, the Liaoning, she didn't speak Han Chinese. So she had to try to catch up with the Mandarin and then interact with other fellow sailormen. And that pretty much shows how the ethnic minorities have come to become a part of this nation's undertaking. And I was told that she just had a daughter, and hopefully her daughter will kind of have a new ride of some sort with the change of this country and the nation. And now we have more interviews, the fifth group interview for NPC deputies. We earlier had Li Shufu, and he is the chairman of course, the Zhejiang GD Holding Group. That is a Chinese multinational automobile manufacturer, and probably the most famous takeover of GD is Volvo, and because GD owned the Swedish passenger car maker since 2010. Let's take a listen what he had to say earlier.
With Chinese Operation Daily, my question is for Mr. Li. In upgrading Chinese economies and pursuing high-quality growth, what the automobiles industry in China will do to move up the value chain? Thank you for your question. Talking about supply-side structural reform, this is a very important decision by the central government, and it charts the course for Chinese enterprises moving up the value chain. And it is also a very important part of our efforts to move up the value chain. The Chinese automotive industry is at the mid and lower end of the global value chain. So how to move up the value chain at the global level is a very important task facing us. So specifically, I think we're going to do the following work. First, we still have to cement our foundation and build on our core strengths by fostering key talents and R&D capacity. Globally, we have built some R&D and research centers in Ningbo and in Zhejiang province. We are also greatly developing our research capacity. Ningbo is a very important place where industries are moving up the value chain globally. Secondly, we have to foster new growth drivers and revamp the old drivers of the growth. By doing so, we can switch from the old drivers to the new drivers of the growth. Third, we have to make a greater investments in the digital area. The 21st century is the era of technological transformation and commercial restructuring. So digital research and development is key. We have to revamp our systems of services and combine online and offline capabilities to develop our digital capacities. By doing so, we can provide both online and offline services and products to our customers. And our customers will be able to experience the digital, mobile experiences and products. Fourthly, we have to promote electrification of the vehicles, which is a very important trend here to stay. We plan to electrify 90% of the Geely vehicles by 2020. Fifthly, we will continue to promote globalization. In today's world, 50 to 60% of the components come from foreign countries. The share of the Chinese vehicles in the global market is very small. So how to make sure that we can achieve globalized development in which every one of us can share in the benefit is a very important question. And globalization is the key. We have to raise the share of the Chinese vehicles in the global market and increase the added value and branding value of our products in the global market. So all in all, everything we do aims to improve the experience of the customers and consumers. And what we're doing is to meet the growing and new demands of the consumers for better products. And we are also implementing the great decision of the supply-side structural reform by offering better products in the automotive sector. We can only gain happiness through hard work, so we still have to persevere in our hard work to promote the better competitiveness of the Chinese automotive industry in the world.
That's a very ambitious car maker, Li Shufu, the chairperson of the Geely Automobile Holding Group. Obviously, he has a very ambitious plan for car manufacturing, electric cars, and globalized supply chain. But let's first cross over to our reporter, Tianwei, who is now standing by, because the NPC will have its final plenum for this year, this morning. And Tianwei, you are now at the Great Hall of the People, the venue. What are the NPC deputies supposed to do in the morning? Who can they decide on?
Well, so good morning to you. I am on the second floor of the Great Hall of the People, waiting for the deputies to come in to the Great Hall of People. A very full schedule of the morning. 7 documents they are going to vote on, and they are also going to hear 2 important speeches coming from top Chinese leaders. Let's talk about the 7 documents first. First of all is the government work report, followed by the draft of the National Supervision Law, as well as both the local and the central government budget plans. Those are 3 important documents. Followed by that will be the reports and the decisions made by the NPC Standing Committee and the work report by the NPC Standing Committee, together with the report of the People's Supreme Court and the report by People's Supreme Procuratorate. So after the 7 documents are being voted on by about 3,000 deputies of the National People's Congress for the first session of the 13th NPC, there's likely going to be the speech given by Chinese President Xi Jinping. Now, that is going to attract most of the attention. As you may know, just a few days ago, President Xi Jinping has been voted unanimously into the office. That's certainly going to give him strong momentum for governance. And certainly there's also a strong lineup of top leaders in China already over the past few days. So people want to hear what is going to be the plan for China from now on. And followed by that, and to wrap up this morning's session of the NPC, will be a speech given by the Mr. Li Zhanshu, who is the chairman of the Standing Committee of the NPC. Of course, after all of this arrangement, there's also going to be a press conference given by the Chinese Premier Li Keqiang, together with other vice premiers who were just elected and decided on yesterday. Zhou Yue.
And you mentioned President Xi will give a speech. Normally, it's the top legislator will take the floor and give a speech. So what can we expect from President Xi himself? Is it going to be a thematic speech or just a prose-like speech?
We have learned that this is going to be a very significant speech. First of all, there are certain information and background we need to look at. This is the very first NPC right after China has decided to come into a new era. It's a socialism with Chinese characteristics in a new era. Meanwhile, China has also decided that this is going to be a process of rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. And this is also part of the process when China is fulfilling its Chinese dream. So you can see the great significance behind this. And also this year, the NPC has had the constitutional amendments the very first time in more than a decade. And it is going to see the transformation of the country's economy together with the task that China has to find its right position in the world because of the complicated and evolving international situation, including some of the bilateral relations such as that between China and the United States, which had got a lot of coverage over the past few days. And this is going to be an important one for President Xi because he's going to help us to understand how, together with all of his colleagues in the leadership, the 3 battles are likely to be fought, namely the battles against environmental pollution, the elimination of poverty, and also the battle against the risk in the financial sector. All of these need to be done. The tasks are daunting, and yet we have seen the 13th National People's Congress. At the conclusion of it, there's already a strong lineup of Chinese leadership, so people are looking forward to hear what could be the mandate and what would be the specific roadmap. And people also want leadership when it comes to the vision for the future at a critical juncture of China. Now, I'm standing on the second floor of the National People's Congress conference hall, which is the Great Hall of the People. The deputies are coming in. They're talking to one another in quite an enthusiastic way. So you can tell they feel very looking forward to this morning's session. And certainly they have a lot of decisions to make for the morning. Back to you, Zhou Yue.
All right. Thank you so much, Tian Wei. Of course, we all look forward to what kind of a message the Chinese top leaders will have at the conclusion of the first session of the 13th NPC. Thank you, Tian Wei.
Thank you.
And earlier we heard some of the delegates speaking at the delegates corridor. Now let's take a look back of the background information of some of them. Among them, of course, Li Shufu. He just talked to the press about China's car manufacturing. Actually, Li started from scratch, beginning his career in the refrigerator manufacturing back in 1986. And then he moved on to motorcycle manufacturing 7 years later. And then he founded the Zhejiang Geely Holding Group in 1995. In 1997, he entered the automobile manufacturing with the vision of producing cars that ordinary people can afford. It's kind of a Chinese version of Ford. But Geely Holding Group's subsidiary Geely Auto became China's first private auto manufacturer. And Li worked his way all the way up from rags to riches, and now his company's total assets exceed 200 billion yuan, with more than 70,000 workers in his workshop. And Zhejiang Geely global expansion is eye-catching as well. The company reached an agreement with Ford to acquire Volvo in 2010, became the first Chinese multinational automotive group to do that. Geely acquired a large portion of stakes in Lotus Cars and Proton in 2017, and he purchased 9.7% stake in Daimler in February and became the German company's largest shareholder. Besides global expansion, Geely also eyes sustainability and green development. Geely has announced a Blue Geely initiative in which it aims to have 90% of its sales coming from new energy vehicles by 2020. And he mentioned all these information during the answering the question sessions. So it seems this car manufacturer, a private businessman, is very ambitious but also visionary, because he sees the car manufacturing as clean energy and as a global cooperation. What do you make of his ambition and the way that he wants the car manufacturing to go down the road?
We look at the cars, but an interesting thing to think about is when you think about industrialization, what are the most powerful symbols? Automobile, underground. Up in there, it's planes. In the sea, aircraft carriers. So as far as human history is concerned, very powerful three symbols. And
the most important engineering,
industrialization, engineering. And his story represents a story of learning process here in China. What is missing here is we need to think of the ecology that China has built so that our firms can continue to learn from the global system. Remember, when we start to produce cars, we forge a lot of joint ventures. To use that word, FDI, joint ventures is not 100% foreign-owned subsidiaries. This is a very powerful vehicle through which you have spillovers, learnings, both internally, because they are going to hire Chinese workers, and spill over externally, so that when you produce good quality cars, your competitors have to be in the competition. So it's through those internal and external spillovers, our own domestic firms get a better chance to climb up the global manufacturing.
So you're saying China's manufacturing can got the way it is now is because we learn from others first, and we become quick learners.
Quick learners. And trade, for instance, if you get into trade, because your clients are going to raise higher demands in terms of quality, and those feedbacks are very important for your group of engineers to design better quality to meet the demands of your clients. And it's a gradual, a continuous and the process. Now you see we have Geely, and my take of that is this firm does not grow out of blue. It grows in that kind of ecology, and as a continuation of that logic. Now it is very smart for Geely to move and to acquire some equity of those best quality car manufacturers like Daimler. Benz, so that it can continue to see that the firm continue to climb up those technology ladders. And it's very important. The firm is also considering to grow, but now it's not just grow, it's grow with a green consideration. The first step is to sort of move from sort of mechanical geared car into electric driven, and my personal observation is a electric driven car is a very important step for the ultimate rollout of automated cars.
But of course, the climbing up of the value chain of Chinese manufacturing will change the world economy. As a result, there might be some disputes and collisions with other major economies in the world. One of them is, of course, the China-U.S. economic relations. Now let's turn to CGTN America in D.C., and my colleague Mike is over there to talk about that. Mike?
Yes, so the annual two sessions capture the attention of many politicians and analysts here in the United States. China and the U.S. are two major economic powers, and they are deeply connected by benefits and common interests. The national legislature has approved a number of senior officials to handle China's economy. Roy Ruttenberg has more on the newly promoted Chinese official who has attracted a great deal of interest here in Washington.
A lot of talk about Liu He being named vice premier. Many analysts like that he speaks English, that he's Harvard educated, that he's understated, that he has Xi Jinping's ear, and that he'll likely push to rein in risk. Remember, he was just here in Washington earlier this month trying to resolve trade tensions between the U.S. and China.
And among the tensions Roe just referred to, of course, punitive tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. That set off a storm of lobbying here in Washington. Several retail groups are pleading with the White House to prevent a potential trade war. CGTN's Nathan King has more.
American trade associations really pushing the White House. I've got two letters here sent to me from American businesses. I counted 45 to 50 trade groups in just these two letters, all with one message. Mr. President, do not do this. The negative effects of tariffs on Chinese businesses will actually far outweigh the benefits. There are so many quotes in here. I'm going to read you one from the American Apparel and Footwear Association. Tariffs are a hidden tax on Americans, plain and simple. More than 41% of clothing, 72% of footwear, and 84% of travel goods sold in the U.S. are made in China. A tariff on these products would be a tax on every American. In addition to increasing costs for American families, this action could result in retaliatory tariffs that target American businesses, resulting in job losses. At the end of the day, this could be disastrous for American families and American businesses. Now, all this comes, as you know, as the U.S. president was focused very much on the trade deficit between the U.S. and China, which is about $375 billion a year. And despite advice from most economists and some of his own staff, he is fixated on getting this number down. It's a number he really looks at rather than other trade numbers. He has asked for tariffs. Apparently he was presented with $30 billion. He said that wasn't big enough. There could be tariffs of up to $60 billion. Now, American businesses complaining, obviously, about this. What about China? Well, China's sort of taking a wait-and-see attitude, as they've seen with the tariffs when it comes to steel. There has been a bit of listening to industry and then responding, exempting countries, for example. Maybe this will happen here. Maybe they'll get watered down. But China is warning that basically saying, look, this is no way to conduct trade policy. We've got a problem. Let's sit down.